Hello everyone. Today's topic is G7 Group of 7. Let's begin our video with the contents which are going to see in this video. So first of all, it's introduction, role of G7, significance of G7 in current geopolitics, recent summit, that is 50th summit of G7, India and G7 as strategic partnership, limitations of G7 and what can be the way forward for G7. Moving ahead, introduction of G7. G7 is an informal grouping of seven major advanced economies. So G7 comprises, as the name itself shows, G7, that there are seven members in this informal group. Let's have a look on the members countries: Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. As it is much visible that these all are the most advanced countries in the world in terms of economy or in terms of trade. Moving ahead, what is the nature of the forum? That we have seen that there are many organizations like ASEAN, SAARC. They the countries came together for the economic and holistic development of the countries. So, what is the nature of G7? G7 has such as no formal constitution or permanent secretariat, as the other organizations have their secretariat at some places permanent, like we know that BIMSTEC at Nepal, annual summits to discuss and coordinate policies on global trade, security, climate change, and economic development. So G7 summits held to discuss and coordinate policies for global trade, for security purpose, climate change, and economic development. It is much like all other groupings of the world. So how it was originated? If we saw in 1975, it was only G6, and Canada joined in 1978, 76, just one year after the formation of G6. Canada joined and G6 becomes G7. So G6 was in 1975, it was originated, and G7 became in 1976 after joining Canada. Russia briefly joined in 1997 but was suspended in 2014 after Crimea annexation. So when Russia joined, it became G8, but but its membership was suspended in 2014 when Russia attacked Ukraine. We all are witnessing this war. Even today, Russia and Ukraine is fighting. Moving ahead, the role of G7 in terms of global leaderships. It shapes the global agenda on economic stability, climate action, and political security. It influences policy making through joint declarations and coordinated actions. Collective actions. It catalyzes cooperation on pressing issues such as climate change mitigation, terrorism, and economic recovery after the crisis. We saw that in this today fast developing world, every developing economy is focusing on its industrial part without caring for the nature. So the groups and organization has to come together for the welfare of the earth. So most of the groups they form for climate change and the terrorism and security threats. It's the biggest menace for the countries who's having bad neighbors. If we saw in terms of India, we have Pakistan that always we are facing cross-border terrorism. So somehow these organizations and groupings helps to mitigate terrorism and also in terms of economy to recover after crisis. Broadening participation. It initiates discussions that feed into wider, more inclusive forums like the G20 and UN bodies. Crisis responses. There, as we saw COVID-19 in 2020 pandemic, vaccine support and global health financing. The countries also support in terms of crisis. If some nations facing any war like situation or any epidemic or the worldwide when the whole world was facing a pandemic of COVID-19, they come together for elimination of the disease. In Russia-Ukraine war, as we saw, sanctions and military and economic aid. As we saw that these countries came together. If there is any war between two countries, then they put sanctions and military and economic aid. Now, significance of G7 in the current geopolitics. Global governance leadership. That the governance at the global level. If you see AI governance, then Hiroshima AI process in 2023. Hiroshima is in Japan, which was bombarded with nuclear weapon by the US in World War II. Global partnership on AI and OECD. Tax governance. Formation of FATF in 1989 to counter money laundering. FATF. Financial Action Task Force. It's the type of force to counter money laundering because these are the these are the channels through which terrorists get funded. So somehow to counter these organizations like G7 helps to eliminate the terrorism through countering money laundering with the help of FATF, which was established in 1989. BEPS initiative to curb corporate tax alliances. Payment system. Defender of rules-based order. It promotes sovereignty, territorial integrity, and freedom of navigation. Example: joint statements against Chinese actions in South China Sea. That the countries, the members of G7, those who are member in the G7, they came together to join to release any statement against anybody like we see Chinese actions and aggression in South China Sea. In crisis platform, it addresses conflicts like Russia-Ukraine war, Israel-Hamas conflict, and Red Sea attacks on commercial shippings. In times of crisis, G7 members also focuses on the addressing some conflicts like in international war, like Russia-Ukraine, Israel-Hamas conflict in the Middle East. It is the most unstable, and it's happening even now. Red Sea attacks now since 2025, and we are witnessing the genocide which is going to happen in Hamas. Red Sea attacks on commercial shipping. Voice of Global South engages developing countries on climate finance, debt relief, and energy security. Coalition of democracies. It promotes democratic values and sanctions authoritarian regimes, supports free elections and human rights advocacy. These are the some basic requirements for any country to channelize its power with the help of people. It promotes democratic values, sanctions authoritarian regimes, that there should be free and fair elections, and there should be advocacy of human rights. Now let's have a look at the recent summit, 15th G7 Summit 2024, which held in Apulia in Italy. Now let's have a look on the key highlights. US 600 billion by 2027 for infrastructure in developing countries. This is something huge investment by US in the US dollar of 600 billion by 2027 for infrastructure. If we see support for IMEC, that is Indian Middle East Europe Economic Corridor. It's type of road and port initiatives to connect India, Middle East to all the way Europe as an economic corridor. The Green Wall, the Great Green Wall initiative, which was taken in Africa, combating desertification through tree plantations, biodiversity promotion, and economic opportunities. Ukraine aid and AI governance, we have already seen it. Moving ahead, India and G7 a strategic partnership, political and strategic importance. Of course, India and G7 are not a member but united as a guest country in recent summits. Acts as a bridge between global south and global north. We know that in the G7 India is not a member, but it is invited as a guest country. Somehow it has bridged the global south and the global north. Strategic benefit for India in terms of global role, diplomatic leverages, economic opportunities. There is scope for FDI, that is foreign direct investment, because there is need of investments from the foreign, if it say in terms of defense in the every sectors. Technology and climate cooperation. Somehow if India joins G7, then there will be access to green technology and clean energy financing. Counterbalance to China, supports a rule-based Indo-Pacific order, aligns with India maritime and security interests. As we know that we have a great threat from China in terms of border disputes and also in terms of economic and trade. But to counter China, India had to be a member of the organizations who are against China's expansionist policy. Global South advocacy raises issues of climate finance, debt relief, and energy security at G7 forums. As India is not a member, as we saw earlier, but as a guest invited, it somehow shows the voices from the global south to the people in the global north. European energy role. India refines discounted Russian oil and supplies Europe, easing their energy shortages. As you know, India is dependent on much more exports from the Russia oil. Mediator potential. Neutral stance in Russia and Ukraine conflict enables a possible peace brokering role. As you know, India always take its stand as a neutral on the Russia-Ukraine conflict and always wanted to stop this war and solve amicably. Now let's have a look on the limitations of G7. Its declining economic share. From the 60% of the global GDP in the 1970, it has come down to 26.4% in 2023. So we witnessed a large downfall in terms of economic share in the global GDP from 60% to 26%. Lack of inclusivity. It includes, it means G7, excludes emerging powers like India, Brazil, African Union. We witnessed that G7 members are very rigid in their memberships. They are not allowing member countries from the global south, like the emerging power of our nation, India, Brazil, and African Union. Platforms, there are much more platforms which are like G20, BRICS. They are gaining more relevance because of this inclusivity. They are including the voices from the all directions, from the global south, Middle East, from the east. Internal discord. This is one of the great challenges for the G7. Member disagreements. US withdrawal from climate pacts weakens unity. As we saw that US is withdrawing from the various pacts and the climate actions taken place, US is withdrawing itself. So this house, as being the most powerful country in the G7, it shows and weakens the membership and the relationship between the countries having in G7. Weak decision making. No binding authority, relies on voluntary commitments. Democratic only focus. Exclude non-democratic but influential players like China. Limited global south impact. Struggles to effectively meet developing nations' needs. As we saw that G7 is a country of emerged economy. That means they are already developed and they are not including the south, the people, the countries from global south which are still in developing phase. Over reliance on voluntary pledges, lack of enforcement and accountability mechanism. Earlier we saw it. Now, what can be the way forward for the G7? Institutional strengthening. That there should be a permanent structure for continuity and policy follow-up. That at least there should be a secretariat and accountability of all the members of the forum. So somehow it will strengthen the institution. Global South focus. Address trade, debt relief, and climate priorities. There should be involvement of more and more nations from global south and they should address the trade issues, debt relief. As we saw the China's debt trap policy, it should focus on debt relief and climate prioritize climate action. Increase investment in clean energy for developing nations. G7 members should start investing in the developing nations, being a developed nations in clean energy. Geopolitical stability. In the clean energy, you can relate ISA, that is International Solar Alliance, by our own nation, India. Geopolitical stability. Enhance Indo-Pacific cooperation and security frameworks. Healthcare and pandemic preparedness. Strengthen global health systems and response mechanism. So these are all the factors upon which G7 should focus and become more inclusive by including countries from global south and looking way forward for the development of the whole world. So this is all about G7. I hope you learned something. Thank you.